This season is going to be effing royal. That's all you got to say. These people have been waiting on you for 2 months for the new season to come back. You better come better than that. Okay. This season is going to be effing royal and effing fierce. And that's all I got to say about that. Hey, queens. Yeah, you know who you are. God, come on. Go ahead and put that crown on your head. Now tilt a little to the left. Now a little to the right. Perfect. Now let's get to work. Because we know you got big goals. And you got big dreams and not afraid to let them know. Why? Because you step into your purpose. You speak out on your faith. And you shift up in your journey. Because you a boss. Welcome to the podcast, Drop the Expiring Act with your host, Veli of QueenBayGoals.com, reminding you that you are a queen before anything else. It's your life and your goals. Make it royal. All right, y'all. Go ahead and work that crown. Hey Queen Bays, welcome to the new season of the Drop the Expiring Act podcast. This is episode number 56. 56, y'all. From a podcast that was dreamed up in 2018, attempted in 2018 and 2019, and finally came to life in 2020 when the world started shifting and almost put back on the shelf and back into our aspiring phase. But I said, nope. It's now or never, and here we are, 56 episodes in and counting, as we have dropped our aspiring act, and we hope that we are inspiring you to do the same. So before I jump into this new season and what it's all about, I want to pause and thank my listeners from all over the world. Big shout outs to whoever's listening in Virginia, Ohio, Georgia, California, and Washington. Those are my top 5 states. Big shout outs across the pond to my listeners in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Leinster. Whew, it amazes me every time I see the listener breakdown by region. And these listeners have been steady in my top 3 regions. And the numbers don't go down. Like usually, like if somebody just listens one time and, that's the only time they listen, like the numbers would go down. But in those top 5 states and in those top places that I just mentioned in the UK, you guys have been steady listening to my podcast. So I just want you to know that I see you, I appreciate you, and you will be happy to know that this season I've actually interviewed several listeners from France, England, and Finland. So when you hear the accents and you think you're listening to your local radio, you're not. It's still me, your host, Veli, over here in the States on the podcast, interviewing women all over the world who want to remind you to drop your aspiring acts. In this particular season, I was actually looking for a specific type of woman. One who has been in a situation where she looked at her life and said, WTF. How did I get here? Can I get out of this mess? Is this really my life? This season's theme is called From Royally Effed to Royally Fierce. In the first half of the season, I interview women who have been royally fed up, royally faithful to their detriment, royally failed, royally flawed, and some straight up royally fucked. Or at least they felt like it in that moment. What I'm bringing to you with their interviews is how they've changed that around to turn their lives into something fierce or flowing or fire. They didn't allow their situations to hold them back. They went through the traumas, the pain, the struggle, but somehow they found their way to turn it into something amazing, into a life that they recognize, into a life where they are no longer living in a state of fear or doubt or acceptance when it's not working. Because sometimes we stay in that mode of we're just going to accept that this is what our life is and we just keep going. Sometimes we have to realize that we have a choice. We don't have to accept what the situations that we're in. These women have found their way to living in a place where they are no longer holding their tongues or waking up to a day and a life designed by them and not what society or the outside world told them was required to be great. I bring them to your listeners' ears because sometimes that's where we are, right? We get into a state of not recognizing our own lives or just going with the flow because we don't think we have a choice. But these women are here to share with you that you have the option to move forward. And that's the first half of the season. The second half of the season, we're going to get into royal goals, which I've talked about in a previous season of the podcast. But I'm going to break it down again this season. And I've invited several women to discuss their royal goals that they've been going after. So women who are going after, if you remember what royal stands for, women who are going after goals that are real, original, yours, ambitious, and levitating. And some of that definition has changed a little bit, but we'll get into that breakdown in the second half of the season that starts in November. So more on that once we get into that part of the season. I hope that you're subscribed to the podcast so that you're the first to know when new episodes drop. New episodes are every Wednesday. Right now the podcast is on Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, and most places that podcasts are streamed. You can subscribe on any of those apps or platforms. All the links will be in the show notes for this episode, and it's also on the website, queenbaygoals.com. All the show notes for this and previous episodes are on the website as well, queenbaygoals.com. If you've missed an episode, make sure you go back and check them out. And we always close our podcast, even in the beginning of the season, with a quote of the podcast. And this week's quote is, "You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great," by Zig Ziglar. And it's not a Drop the Aspire Night podcast if it doesn't have a twist on the quote for my solo episodes. And my twist is just 2 words, right? Start now. Start now. I couldn't get to 56 episodes if I didn't start. And I don't know whether or not you're thinking about starting a podcast or writing or publishing a book or starting a business or doing what you love. But whatever that thing is that you're aspiring to do or be, start now. And that's all I have to say about that. The first interview of the season drops on September 8th. Make sure you're subscribed and don't forget to leave a review wherever you are in the world. And for a more personal shout out in a future episode, I love reading your reviews. I love learning who you are. I love learning where you are in the world. And if you've been with me since episode number 1, please drop a review or please drop a comment in the show notes because that's what's up. You've been here from the beginning. And you're going to see some of the transformations of the podcast in this new season. I've actually hired some help because if you follow me on social, you always know I'm complaining about I don't like to edit videos. But in this season, I've actually hired some help to actually help me with the video editing. So it's going to look like my podcast has upgraded. And that's just because I turned over the things that I don't like to other people who are just great at what they do. So thank you for my assistants that have helped this season so far. Hopefully you will stay with me this season and through the next season. And just thank you for my listeners for being here and for sticking it out with me, because you will see the transformation from how we started to where we are now. So that's part that goes back to what I said, which is start now, because you will not see that transformation or you will not see how things can change if you don't start. So start now. And I'll talk to you in the next episode. You have been listening to another episode of Drop the Aspiring Act. If you're looking for more information on this podcast and other episodes, please visit queenbaygoals.com. That's QueenBaeGoals.com. All right, y'all. I'll see you in the next podcast.